Robin, it looks pretty dry. How's the season been?
Yeah, well, it stayed cold for a long time, and it was good for some crops. It was good for the spring broccoli because it just held the heads tight and firm with slower growth rather than a big rush of growth that makes them go a bit light and fluffy. And so it's been good for that. And for most of the other crops, things have just been slow to happen, like the real early spuds. They just stayed under the ground for quite a long time, didn't do much, and they're probably 2 or 3 weeks later than what they were last year for a full emergence.
And now, of course, we've had a whole lot of nor'westers in Canterbury, so it's gone the other way.
Yeah, so some of the paddocks were still just moist enough and it was still cold enough, so I wasn't in a big hurry to get out there and start too early. So we sort of held back a bit on some of the groundwork, and then we were all programmed to get out there and get into it, and then it blew.
How much of your topsoil disappeared off into the ocean?
Well, no, because of the wind, you stop. So that sort of put us back, and then the wind stopped, and then it's warmed up, and it's like, right, all guns blazing, but some of the other cultivation work would like to be a bit further ahead on that. But
Robin, what's the process to go from one season into the next as far as the paddocks are concerned?
Depending on what crop it's going into, but like so this paddock here, it was a cereal crop last year, had a bit of grass in there for a bit of grazing during the winter and the spring, and it's just had a lick of Roundup, and then we've given it a few passes with the multi-disc machine down there with the roller, and then ridge it up and put the separator through and get the clod-free beds for the potato planting, and a bit of fertiliser goes in before the last pass, just it gets worked in, and then it's in with the planter.
Now the Roundup, that's not going to get the new stuff that's coming up.
It's just dealing with the weed that's there at the time and helps the grass make sure it dies and the roots release from the soil so it works better.
And I guess you just hope there's not too much seed buried there.
There's always seed there. You're nothing more sure than that, so we'll get that with a pre-emerge and a lick of Roundup just before the potatoes come up, and that'll give us good weed control for the whole crop.
So really it's a pretty busy time for you horticulturalists at the moment?
Yeah, this is full noise at this time of the year because you're getting your groundwork to get your crops in. We've got the potato crops going, and you're still tidying up some of last year's crops that are coming out with broccoli and things that have been harvesting into the spring. So a lot of cultivation work, a lot of getting crops in, and you want to get everything in the right conditions, so you can't get too far ahead of yourself, but you want to be on time because, you never know from one year to the next just what on time is, but quite often you've still got to be referencing a point on the calendar because you can be sitting there thinking it's not quite ready, not quite ideal to go, and then in Canterbury it can switch from one thing to the other, and all of a sudden you can go from thinking you're about right to 2 weeks behind, and then you get a week's wet weather thrown in amongst that, which would be nice, but then you're chasing your tail from there.
Irrigation?
Yeah, well, we haven't started any irrigation. We've got a bit of beetroot, we're just emerging at the moment, so we've had to run the irrigator over that twice just to soften it up with the ground capping a wee bit, just to help that come through so we get more even emergence, so we can then have a better go at the weed control from there. But most of our crops, a lot of our paddocks we're not planting until October, November. Like the potato main planting's happening now, so the ground's been fallowed through till now, so there's good moisture reserves there at the moment. Pumpkin ground, for a lot of it at the moment we're more on a weed control phase on fallowed ground. While we're getting crops on the ground, we don't really kick into much irrigation until November, December, when the crops are starting to draw. Whereas, if you're dairy farming, you've got grass that's growing all the time at the moment, and it's sucking moisture out every day. Whereas, a paddock like this, there's really not much moisture draw. And then you got your cropping farmers, a lot of the autumn sown crops, they've got a bit of growth on them now, so they're sucking a lot of moisture on an average day. Whereas, we've got bare paddocks, they're not drawing much.
Looking back over last season, how did you guys go? Did you do all right?
Yeah, it's been a reasonably good season for us. Certainly it was good to have a slightly more normal season, for want of better terms. After the wet one we had the year before, that was nobody's friend, and it was good this year to have good digging conditions for getting the potato crops out. It was a colder winter, but that's fine. You don't mind that. It's cold's fine, wet's what I'd prefer not to have. Yeah, but it's gone good for it's been a good winter for the broccoli on our winter ground. That's gone well with the drier, colder season.
Pest control, pest pressure. Do you have problems with things like springtails?
Yeah, they start to be a problem now on emerging crops like the beetroot and the like, and they've been colder for longer. That's just held some of those things back, and we normally might have had to go in and deal with a wee few aphids and some of the spring broccoli crops by now, but they're only just starting to show up now, so that's a good thing, so we haven't had to go near any of those.
The wheel of marketing continues to turn. What's your latest trick?
Oh, I wouldn't say it's the latest trick. It's one I've been working on for a wee while now. The diversions on the production front have sort of held it back a bit, but on the shelves now we've got our new beetroot pre-pack bag, so we're a bit excited about that. It's been a long time since it got the kick off, and it's come to fruition now, so we're quite pleased about that. It's a look on the shelves, mainly in the new world, so you'll definitely see it there.
And of course red beet's becoming very fashionable.
Well, it is a good vegetable. I mean, there's a lot of vegetables are good vegetables. It's, your grandparents and what have you always knew they were good and healthy and you should eat them, but didn't necessarily have the science to go with it. And just nowadays they've got a bit of science to go with it, and everyone suddenly, it's like they're rediscovering something that everyone always knew anyway, and people are getting a bit more creative now too with how they cook things and present them, and there's a lot of people with all these food programs are a bit more interested in having a go at something too, especially when they've actually seen and someone's talked them through it on TV, and there's some very nice dishes to be made with all sorts of vegetables, not just the beetroot of course, and yeah, it's good for you.